Okay, we're starting a new project. This is project number 2. This is a rendering of glass and reflective surfaces. I'm going to start with a gesture construction sketch. We're going to work at 14 by 17, which is very similar to the size that we used on the first project. Just like that project, I've got a red outline for 14 by 17 on a piece of white bond paper. It's 18 by 24 piece of paper. It fits fine. And then I've got a piece of tracing paper over the top of that. Please make sure that you read my attached PDF presentation on ellipses. It's got an overview of the entire project, but the most important thing is the information on ellipses. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm working with tracing paper. I'm working with color erase pencils. I've got indigo blue color erase. You could use any kind of graphite, I'd say H to HB, something like that for your sketch. We want to keep it light at the beginning. I also want to do a little thumbnail sketch, and that gets me started. So I want to keep it nice and loose at the very beginning. I want to block things off where I want them to fit. This will be the entire length of this. It'll be about this big. That'll be for the penguin object on the left. For the glass vial and the glass ball, scientific instruments, I just want to real roughly kind of block in where I think they should be, and I'll make adjustments as I go. Okay. The other thing that I want to do right away, so if I want this to be the top of the penguin right here, I want to get that angle right away, and that angle is going to show me how high that beaker should be. Now, I'm drawing ellipses and I'm drawing circles, so you draw through the form, and it's going to be much, much easier and much, much simpler if you do that. Okay. Now I want to start lining things up, so I want to come back up to my objects and start lining things up. So I notice that for the top of this spout right here, if I come straight across, it comes through the neck and the head of the penguin right here. So that's where I want that head to be. So if I come down a little bit and then I look at the bottom of the spout where it hits that sphere, the very bottom of the spout straight across is the lid, the bottom of the lid. So I'm just doing straight lines right now. I'm just doing horizontal lines. I can do vertical lines later if I need them. Probably won't need to do that many vertical lines except for midlines. And then all the way down to the bottom, I notice that the ellipse for the bottom of the beaker, the back of the ellipse, there's a little distortion, but the back of the ellipse is on the same plane as the legs of the penguin. So that's the very bottom. But I can get the angle and just make sure that that's accurate. And there's my angle there, so I want to bring that down a little bit. So at the same time that you're finding these things out while you're constructing, you're moving things around just to match what you find. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to start maybe just a little bit of refinement. I want a midline now. And it's always going to be at the beginning. Should be a hand-drawn midline. Okay, that's just something to guide you on your symmetry on both sides. And draw through, even if you can't see the other side. Always draw through the form so you can check it later. Okay, all hand done. All right, so you can check it just to make sure you're in the ballpark. So I want to make sure I come out to there. And then I'm going to start measuring things and just make adjustments if I need to. But let's see what the whole thing is from the bottom of the beaker to the top of the glass ball, sphere. Right? That goes all the way up to his neck. So this measurement here is equal to the neck. And that's where I have it. Okay. All right. So those are ways to refine. There are ways to check, just to make sure everything's in the right place. Okay? Let's start with the ellipses, okay? So you're drawing through the form, and make sure that you read my PDF on ellipses. Very important to know what you're doing and how big those major axis and minor axis are going to be as you go. So we know that eye level's probably somewhere up here. So all of my ellipses are going to be slightly open, slightly, and they're going to get wider across the minor axis as I move my way down. Okay. So they're guesstimations, but you know, if you know the rules and you're working your way down, they should be fairly accurate. Okay. All right. So as I move my way away from eye level, they're going to be rounder. The roundest ones are going to be the farthest away from eye level. Now you can practice this whole idea of making ellipses and drawing ellipses. Of course, I'm doing this underhand, which it's almost impossible to make a really nice ellipse if you're on the point. If you're on the underhand soft edge of the pencil, it's much easier. You want to draw all the way through, all the way through. Okay. All right. So I've just barely got it blocked in, which is what I want to do because I want to be able to change things as I go. I can check my ellipses. I'm going to be much firmer with my checking later. I just want to make sure that I'm in the ballpark wherever I can. So at this point I've checked just to make sure that everything is in the right place, the right location. So now I'm going to refine the forms a little bit more. So I'm just going to go a little bit darker so you can see it a little bit easier. Refining the form just a little bit. Okay. So at this point, I want to get my ruled lines for my major axis, so the form, and my minor axes. My minor axes for the ellipses that go across. So the best way to do that is find your midline. You know, you're going to have to eyeball it, and hopefully we'll be pretty close. And then the nice thing about using a triangle is that you're going to get right angles. All right. So I'm going to keep it really, really light at first. Just to make sure that that's close to where I want it to be in the center. So it looks pretty good if I just check just a little bit here and there. Yeah, I'm in the ballpark, so I can totally adjust around this. All right. So now I'm going to do my, and you know, another good ruler to use. Unfortunately, I don't have my red see-through ruler, but you could use one of these, and you can see through some of these lines. And the nice thing about having the red line around the outside is you can use it as horizontals and verticals to create your accurate lines across. So I can use the red line on this, and then I can see that this is going to be a right angle. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting my major axis of each ellipse, and I'll talk about why that's important in a minute. Okay. Checking it just to make sure that I'm in the ballpark. I'm going to refine it, totally refine it based on this now. But first I'm going to get all of my major axis on the ellipse. So what I want to do is I want to come to the widest point of the ellipse. I know that's a sketch, but now I'm going to refine it more. So I come to the widest point, and I use this as my guide for a vertical so I can get a horizontal. You can see that I'm going to have to refine that ellipse, but this is what it's all about. Okay, down on the bottom here, lining up with the vertical line, getting my midpoint, 3 of them there. In my PDF, I talk about ellipses that are not parallel to the ground plane. Okay, these ellipses that I just did are parallel to the ground plane. Okay, so they have certain rules that we have to follow, like they have to be horizontal. So if you have an ellipse that is not parallel to the ground plane, like the spout, then what you have to do is sketch out the sides of it. Okay, you're going to divide it up. I freehanded it first. You're going to divide it up in the middle, like that. I'm going to find the midpoint, and I'm going to come right through the center here. I'm going to make it the same angle as my sides. I'm going to do it light so I can check it. Yeah, that's better. That'll work. Okay. So what we want now is we've got a diagonal line. What we want is a line that's perpendicular to that for our major axis of this ellipse. These are perpendicular, right? This major axis of the form, which is also the minor axis of each ellipse. It's a little confusing, but you'll get used to it. This is the major axis because it's the widest one. This is the narrowest one. So this is going to be my major axis right here, and that's going to be my minor axis. Now that I've got my accurate midlines of the form and my accurate major axis, I can come back in now and refine all of my ellipses and all of my symmetry of form. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So I pretty much got the sketch finished, and then I was looking at it, and I'm looking at my reference, and something was bothering me. Something wasn't quite right. This beaker looked like it was too long. It was way down here. I got my angle right, and I got almost all of my other measurements correct, but I kept looking at that, and it was wrong. So the beaker itself was the same size as the sphere, as the glass ball. So let me check that again, make sure. Yep. So those are some of the refinements that I made, and I strengthened the line. You can go back over your line if you want to with a slightly darker pencil. It's still a sketch. I'm going to do a contour line drawing for transfer. So I did my final contour line layer. I used Prismacolor. I actually used a Polychromos indigo blue just so I could see it a little bit easier, a little bit better. I did the best I could with these curves and these ellipses. It's all freehand, so take your time. Don't forget to put in your registration marks, because you're going to put tape down. I want you to put tape down just in case you need it for background, which you probably will. I brought mine in from 15 by 18. I didn't need that much room, so I brought it in about 1 inch all the way around, and left a little extra on the bottom. So I'm ready to transfer to Canson. I'm going to use the mid-value Canson, similar to what we used in the first project. So get your contour line layer ready on tracing paper, get your registration marks, and then you're ready to transfer to Canson. And the next video I'll talk about will be transferring and also getting started with the rendering.